Hello and welcome to Mimi's Sketchbook. Today my illustration was inspired by Paul David Tripp's book New Morning Mercies, and it is August 11th. This is a picture of the back corner of my home, and in the center is a trellis, and on the trellis there's bittersweet growing. And over a week ago, I went out and pruned the bittersweet because it was growing way out of control and had reached up to the roof and was climbing up a gutter. So I went out with my pruners and cut it back, and when I went to pull the vines, I ripped off a piece of my siding. And it's been hanging there ever since. I really like working outside, especially in my garden. And so any time that I can get out there, I do. So I could have been outside every day since I pulled the siding off the house. And every time I've gone by it, it's hard not to notice it. Now I know this little problem is only going to get worse, but it's so easy to come up with an excuse to not stop what I'm doing right now and just take care of it. Now, picking weeds out of the garden is a spontaneous thing for me. But home repairs require kind of warming up to. I'm usually pretty good at ignoring a potential problem, thinking, I'll take care of that tomorrow. But there's another part of my brain that has a picture in it that does get me motivated to do these jobs. And that is a picture of something I call the slow decline. And that is the image of homes in my neighborhood that were once well maintained, but the weeds have overtaken their gardens and shrubs are growing up in front of the windows. Planters aren't filled with lovely flowers anymore. Or maybe a piece of siding's come loose and just left hanging. And I will think, well, something's going on in that house. Some kind of trouble or illness, or maybe it's all just become too much for them in old age. And that right there is what gets me going. I am in no way ready for somebody to say to me, maybe this has all become too much for you to handle. And maybe it's time for you to downsize. And that is a scenario I'm beginning to hear from some of my contemporaries. And I'll tell you, I'm not ready for that. As I said before, I love my garden and I enjoy working in it. And I appreciate my home. And I can still handle a lot of the small home repairs on my own. I won't bore you with how I just installed a new screen door or my adventures with a plumber snake. But I know that if I choose to just be lazy or make excuses for putting off repairs, they will only grow bigger and become overwhelming. Today in his devotions, Paul Tripp talks about making excuses and how we use excuses to shift the blame for our actions to something or someone else. And in a roundabout way, we're actually blaming God. And it might sound like this: God, if only you hadn't made dandelions with all those seeds, and then you made it rain, and the seeds all grew, and so I had to spend all my time digging the weeds up. And that's why I didn't have time to repair the siding on the house. It sounds pretty foolish when you put it that way, doesn't it? And Paul Tripp says that when we act like that, it really indicates the sorry condition of our heart. And for further reading, he sends us over to Deuteronomy 30, which says, "Now what I am commanding you today is not too difficult for you or beyond your reach." And believe it or not, that verse reminded me of my siding. When I just stood in front of it, it was impossible for me to repair it. But when I went and got a ladder, I could easily reach it, and the job wasn't that hard. Just a few readjustments and snapping the siding into place, and it was done. And doesn't that ladder become a terrific visual symbol of God's grace that allows us to do what we could never accomplish on our own? So here's the good news. When we get to the point that we are done ignoring and making excuses and are ready to make some much needed repairs to our heart, that might seem overwhelming, but with God's grace, we can be assured that what He is asking us to do today will not be too difficult for us or beyond our reach. So thank you for joining me today at Mimi's Sketchbook. I hope this has been an encouragement to you. I know doing these devotions is a great encouragement to me. And if they are, could you please help spread the good news on YouTube by giving it a thumbs up or maybe even sharing this with someone else. Thank you, and God bless.